Anyways, moving on, anyone who wishes to, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, roll call. Tonight we have Brian,
Yep.
Joe,
Here.
Tom, here. Wilson,
Here.
and Bernardo is not here. Amelia is not here, and that's it. And Dora is not here tonight. Next up, a review and approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Any comments, questions, or changes from the previous minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. First up is where are you? First up is a notice of intent, Mass DEP file number 0610844. This is the rear Squire Road. Applicant is Stephen Caruso. This is for the garage that we had to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, here this evening on behalf of RNS Realty, who's the owner and the applicant for this project. You might recall that we had to continue the meeting last time because the DEP hadn't issued the file number, as you read into the record. They've now issued the file number, and there hadn't been any technical comments posted. I was able to just today get a hold of the analyst, Phil DePietro at the Northeast region is the reviewer for this project. They reviewed the project today, and their only comment was they wanted to see flow-through openings added to this building, where half of the building is in the floodplain. Floodplain line runs almost through the middle of the building. This half of the building is outside of the floodplain. This half of the building is in the floodplain. As we discussed at the last meeting, we will be raising the grade slightly around the downhill side of this building so that it will be able to be removed from the floodplain. But nonetheless, we did add flow-through openings, which are shown in this red crosshatch on the plans using the state building code formula, which requires that you have 1 square inch of opening per square foot of enclosure within the floodplain. This particular building has about 13,950 square feet of enclosure within the floodplain, which would require 13,900 square inches of flood openings within 1 foot of grade. So we're proposing the front entrance to the garage will be an open garage, just controlled by a gate that's 26 feet long with we just assumed a 30-inch height on the opening. And then we provided 8 openings, excuse me, that are 30 inches high by 7 feet long, for a total of 29,500 square feet of openings, where 13,950 would be required. So tried to go over with the idea that the flooding source would be from Rumney Marsh. It would come this way right through the building and then be able to recede right back to Rumney Marsh. Of course, in addition to this, the stone layers under the pervious pavement will also provide additional flood storage capacity that doesn't currently exist today. So all in all, it results in a net improvement, especially given the fact that the 2 existing buildings that are there today don't have any flood openings in them at all, so they're actually impediments to the floodplain. But that was their only comment. I did already email him the documents. I CC'd the commission on it as well, so you received that same email. So that was the only change that's been made since the last presentation. Again, this is a net improvement. We feel we're providing a planted buffer zone where one doesn't currently exist today, and obviously a much cleaner use than the use that exists today. So I guess with that, I turn it back to the commission for any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you, Rick. I'm surprised with an open floor plan of a garage, they wanted even more openings, but such is life. And thank you for going above and beyond with the amount of openings that you did put in there. I don't think there's any question that you have a compensatory amount for what you have in the floodplain. I don't have any further questions. I think the project is definitely going to be a major improvement to the area. And at this time, I'd like to open up to the commissioners for any final questions on this project.
This is a notice of intent, right?
Yeah.
It says certificate of compliance here.
We won't be ready for that for a
I
few
figured,
years.
yeah. And
Yeah, no, absolutely.
comment in the plan, it says Northeast Expressway. Is that where that is?
That's what that was intended to be.
Yeah. Yeah, at one point, all those overpasses to nowhere here.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Seeing as how this definitely has, going to improve the area, if there's no other questions, I call for a motion to close out the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. And at this time, seeing how you have gone above and beyond with all of your improvements, I'd like to call for a motion to approve this notice of intent.
I'll make a motion to approve the NOI.
And I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Great,
Ray.
thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, next up is a certificate of compliance, Mass DEP file number 0610839. This is 55 Sagamore Street, and I can't remember what this is for some reason. Sorry about that. Do we have a representative here for this project? Okay. All right, well, seeing as how we don't have a representative for the project, we'll have to continue this until next time. Next up is a notice of intent, Mass DEP file number 0610842, Gibson Park. The applicant is the City of Revere. So there's Claire. Excellent. I see the MIPA certificate was issued.
Yes,
Excellent.
so just nearing the end here. For the record, Claire Hogeboom with LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant, the City of Revere. We presented this project to the commission at the last meeting in May and had a few outstanding questions from that meeting from commission members that I addressed in an email to the commission last week, along with providing the revised plans and revised stormwater report to accompany the revised plans. There was a slight revision to the planting plan sheet to address one of the commission members' questions, but before I get to that, I just wanted to go over more of the notable change, which includes revising the originally proposed double-stacked tennis courts to pickleball courts instead. And that is within the previously proposed location of the tennis courts. Primarily, the reason to include that into phase one is the schedule of phase two is now potentially delayed, and we understand that that is an interest for community members to have pickleball courts provided for recreational activities. So that has now been shifted from phase two up to phase one in this location here. Another part that has been changed is the community garden, which is currently located sort of in the northeast or the easternmost portion of the site, and was going to be relocated to the phase two footprint. But again, because of the schedule delays and the city wants to continue to provide those community gardens to everybody to be using, those have been relocated to the sort of southern extent of where the original tennis courts were located. That'll include the raised garden beds. The substrate will be a permeable stone dust, and there will be a concrete pad with 2 storage sheds, and one of the raised beds will be on that path or the pad as well for ADA accessibility. Ultimately, while a reasonably minor adjustment to the project, it still reduces impervious area further by 2,700 square feet. So as a result, the engineer revised the stormwater report to reflect that. So I have a hard copy to provide for the commission's files. If you don't mind, I can give that to Linda at the end here.
Thank you.
I think just going into some of the outstanding questions that we had from commission members, one was the materials for the tennis courts, and since they've been shifted to pickleball courts, the standard of the materials won't really change. The applicant anticipates to do an asphalt or a concrete with an acrylic sand color seal coat on top of that to paint it. That will be an impervious area, but the engineer specifically designed that rain garden on the east side and the stone-lined swales on the west side to receive and treat the stormwater from that area. We had a question about the construction timeframe. So I believe last month we talked about the end of summer 2025, which still is anticipated, but the duration we're expecting more like 6 to 12 months, just with the winter conditions potentially delaying some of the activities, and with the robust planting plan as well, we wouldn't want to install a lot of native trees and seed mixes in the middle of winter. So that's sort of the anticipated timeline. Shoreline access, I believe we talked through that, but I just wanted to confirm that the answer from last month remains, that access to the shoreline will continue to be allowed through the Boatworks property during construction. And then lastly, I should have done this before I started presenting. One of the questions from a commission member about the proposed trees and the tree removal made me realize that the planting plan sheet was mistakenly omitting the proposed trees. So the landscape architect revised this sheet of the plan set to include all of the proposed tree specifications, and the following plan sheet now has all of the shrub specifications. So that's sort of the only revision to the plan itself. The minor revisions that I discussed previously don't adjust any of the proposed trees on the site at all. And I think that also prompted another question on the types of trees that were going to be removed. We have 17 trees that are going to be removed from the site. So prior to this meeting, I went back to Gibson Park to inventory the trees that'll be removed. And of the 17, we have 10 native trees, 1 cultivar, and 6 non-native and invasive trees that'll be removed. A few of them are either, dying or stressed, so not in the greatest of health. But ultimately, with the 23 net increase of native trees, we have a little more than double an increase of native trees as a result of this project on the site. So a pretty good improvement to the diversity and native status of vegetation. So with that, I think that covers all of the revisions that I had on my list.
So what was the total increase of impervious or pervious surface by changing it from from tennis to pickleball?
So it added another 2,700 square feet reduction of impervious. So in total, we are looking at 26,148 square feet of impervious reduction.
Excellent, thank you. And do you plan on putting the tennis courts in phase 2?
I actually don't believe so. I think there have been some other developments throughout the city that they are not needed at the site, but I think phase 2, now that some of these components have been shifted to phase 1, might be reimagined a little bit. I don't want to say no, absolutely not, but I don't believe that's been in discussion after the pickleball courts have been shifted.
Not a problem. Any other questions from the commissioners?
It's just a statement that, because I had mentioned about that pickleball, so you're actually going to have more pickleball courts than the tennis courts that were, there was only two.
Yeah.
And they're eliminated. Now there's 6 pickleball, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And parking.
And yes, parking, nothing changed with parking or anything. The 6 pickleball courts, Just because they're so much smaller than tennis courts, we
Yeah,
can fit
right.
more in there. And it's, I believe, 2 more than we would have had in Phase 2. And just with this relocation of all of that, the pickleball courts are now shifted away from the residential neighborhood to the south. So it sort of felt like another benefit to the adjustment.
And the other question I had in regards to the loss of trees and replanting, does the state specify, or DCR, or whoever it might be, how old the trees are that you're going to plant? Are they 3-year-old trees? Are they 12-foot trees, you know? Like, because you lost, some of these trees that you're losing are substantial trees.
You're right, and I did notice that one of the trees that I identified as sort of dying or stressed seemed to be a large tree that must have fallen down in a big storm event or a large wind event, and it was sort of regrowing from that base trunk, but it seems with just the site being subject to large storms and high winds, that a very large growth tree might be susceptible to damage and things like that. So I haven't seen any language or requests or requirements for the age of the trees, but typically when you're planting a tree and relocating it, you don't really want it to be a very mature tree because you want the root system to be developed but not overly developed, so when it gets transferred it would become even more stressed. So there is sort of a middle ground. You're not going to transplant a 30-foot tall tree, but with the trees being the tree planting at Gibson Park being increased, sort of the overall cover won't change very much, and they'll only grow further as the park continues to be used and the trees grow within it.
Any other, yeah, go ahead, Wilson.
I spoke briefly last time about the type of materials in the turf field. What type of material is going to be used for the field? I saw there a field.
Yes, the project team did.
Oh, okay, great.
The project team did originally once think about synthetic turf, but it just wouldn't work from a regulatory compliance standpoint, and just with the, I believe the cost of maintaining it at the site would have been difficult to maintain. So this is just natural turf grass.
Oh, that's great news. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commissioners? No? Any questions from the audience?
Councilor Guarino Sawaya, can you come up and talk through you, Mr. Chair? When I walked in, we discussed a little bit about the plants and how the community garden is in place right now. But if you're going to be doing this in phase 1, what's going to happen to all the people that are working there now in their community garden? If they're going to move the community garden, and where are they moving it to? I couldn't understand it on that map. Is it behind the building?
No, so
I mean, you have established people that have been constantly using that community garden, and it's basically like you're throwing them away to put other people in there, and it doesn't make it, I can't comprehend what's happening right now.
So the community garden, you know where the play area for the children is next to the parking lot?
Mhm.
So that's just gonna be on the other side of the play area here. So this is the play area.
Where's the building in conjunction to that?
Are you talking about Point of Pines?
Yeah,
Oh, up here.
The Gibson
So
Point?
Yeah, Gibson Point, I'm sorry. The community garden currently is right here, so it's only shifted here.
And if they start to do the work there, that one has to, does that have to close, is what I'm saying, in the midst of the season? And it's not fair to the actual people that have a plot there. And that's all I want to say. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the leeway.
No, you're welcome, you're welcome.
If I-
Definitely a concern. I was, when do you anticipate that you'll need to begin work in that part of the park?
Yeah, I don't believe the construction schedule is fine-tuned to that extent, but I know firsthand that the project team is very sensitive to the community being able to use that garden consistently and not have any interruption and access to it. So I know that that's going to be a primary concern when selecting a contractor to ensure that they're either working on getting this constructed first, so this community garden would be constructed before they dismantle the existing one. And in addition to that, we also found it was very paramount to make sure that there was access to it, that it remained close to the parking area and where people could walk into it easily. So a lot of thought has been going into that to make sure that community members that enjoy using that can still do that and don't have any interruptions to it. But we could certainly report back to the commission on the construction schedule to ensure that there is no interruption in them being able to use the gardens.
At least for this season, it would make sense that they've already started to establish the gardens now. And, if you take it up now or transfer it over to another place, the likelihood of those plants surviving is pretty low. Speaking of stress on plants. But from what I can tell, the majority of the work is going to be done on the field, regrading, taking out paths, taking out impermeable surfaces. So the majority of it, the play area is going to stay and the parking lot is going to stay. So that would definitely keep them with access for the season. And if you're anticipating going through, the year to construct this project, I would say that if they would allow for that community garden just to happen for this last season, I think that would be something the residents would appreciate.
Yeah.
Seeing as how they're going to be inundated with an abundance of construction for a while, especially with both phases to consider. But yeah, that would be something that I would ask for them to consider about that part.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? No? Seeing how there are no other questions, I'd like to call for a motion to close out the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close out the hearing.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, thank you. It's definitely going to be a project that is going to enhance the area for sure. I'm not sure, the jury's still out on how the pickleball is going to impact everybody with the noise, but it still is a park and people are there to play and have fun. And pickleball is definitely fun, for sure. Never played, but looks really cool. Anyways, seeing as how this is definitely going to be a major improvement to the area, I would definitely call for an approval of this notice of intent.
I'll make a motion to approve this motion of intent, notice of intent, excuse me.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Claire, I appreciate
And
it.
of course, this is the revised plan. I haven't provided a hard copy. May I provide it to Linda and enter it
Absolutely.
into the?
Yes, please,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, and then the other stuff that you have printed out
Yes.
there too, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along. Next up is a request for determination of applicability, 23 Frank Ave. This is listed under continued. Were you here before?
No, you guys have.
Oh, yeah, turn the mic on, sorry. I'm just making sure this isn't old business. I want to make sure it's new business,
It
correct?
is new. You guys have been to my house.
Yes, yeah, we did a site visit.
So I'm
We
not
we
sure
walked
if
down,
that
so I'm
counts.
just gonna open the hearing for this. So this project is basically a deconstruction, for those that were not at the site visit. It was a deconstruction of a garage structure, and basically they're asking for a negative determination of applicability for this project. I'll let you speak about it a little bit more if you could introduce yourself, though.
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie Gavin. I am the homeowner at 23 Frank. This is Junior, my contractor. And really, I bought the house in December of 2023. It has a detached garage, no electric, no gas, or anything crazy over there. Sorry, I'm not used to this stuff, so bear with me here. And I went once, the garage has a roof deck on it, so I was like, this is great, overlooks the water. I went one summer with it to kind of figure out if that's what I wanted, and just determined that I would much rather a yard. My backyard is kind of all concrete and pavement. Yeah, so my ask here is that we can take out the detached garage, the roof deck on top, and that we kind of blast the ground, or whatever terms we want to use, so that I can just have grass and enjoy my summers by the beach.
Sounds good. So it would definitely be, do you have any numbers about how much square footage or increase in impervious surface or pervious surface?
I believe it's about 1,600.
Yes,
Is that
Square
right?
feet? Okay, if you want to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
please.
My name is Junior. I'm the contractor. I'm gonna do the work for her. And the square footage we have over there is the garage is about 20 by 20, but the yard is about like 35 by 30,
Yeah.
the whole thing. So we're gonna, tear down the garage and just put a loom and do the grass.
Okay. Are you removing any of the trees in the back? You had a couple nice trees in the
No,
back there.
it's gonna
Okay,
keep the
so those
tree
are all
there.
gonna stay? Canopies is good. What about, how are you gonna be removing it? Are you gonna be excavating, or what are you,
It's gonna be excavating, yeah, with the
Okay.
dumpster. We use
you're
the
not
dumpster.
changing the grade when you add the loom, you're just putting it to the same grade as you have currently?
Correct.
Okay. And then you're just putting grass for the dogs and whatnot?
And me,
Yeah. Excellent.
and my plants.
Yes. Okay, any questions from the commissioners? No? Any questions or comments from the audience at this time?
Angela Garino, Ward 5 Councilor. I have no problem with this. I think it would be better to get rid of the concrete pain in the neck that we
Yeah.
don't like. So it's a better thing for conservation to have some green grass in the neighborhood. Thanks.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage more people in the neighborhood to do so. We'd have a lot less flooding and water issues in that neighborhood especially. My only question is, when you remove the detached garage, you had some structural stuff that you had that came off the back of the house, as well as your downspouts were kind of hidden by some of the structure, the first little patio, the first step out of the house. So I'm just making sure that those remain in place and direct water to your property instead of, moving it around or whatever. I didn't know if you guys, when we were on the site visit, you had mentioned that you maybe want to put in a catch basin or a French drain. Is that off the table, or are you just curious?
Actually, we're gonna use, I think he mentioned something, to do like the bucket, the drain with the buckets, something like the 55 gallons
To put in the ground, yeah.
in the
yeah.
ground,
And
yeah,
then fill
instead to take on that one, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you're definitely creating a huge improvement to the neighborhood by removing this structure, and I thank you for that. I wish more people would. Seeing as there's no more questions, or are there any more questions? Just double check here. I'd like to call for a motion to close out the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. So I would definitely call and would like to call for a motion for a negative determination of applicability to the Wetlands Protection Act.
I would make a motion for a negative, I'm sorry,
Negative determination.
negative determination of applicability.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We'll get signatures for you, and you guys can proceed with work. Once you get all of that paperwork done in hand, you guys can proceed. I wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to seeing some pictures.
Yeah,
All right,
awesome.
thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. I'll invite you guys to the cookout.
Awesome, awesome. I'll bring the steak tips. All right, next up, this is notice of intent, DEP file number 0610845. This is for the Slades Mill Dam. This is just for the testing and boring samples, correct? It has it listed here as the berm removal. I know that's the ultimate goal, but this is the approval for the first phase, correct? Exactly. I just wanted to clarify. If you could turn your mic on and then introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, Rihanna Summers from Weston and Sampson here, and Kristen.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Holmeyer. I'm the Resilience Manager for the North Suffolk Office of Resilience and Sustainability, or NSORS. I work for the cities of Chelsea, Revere, and the town of Winthrop.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess just before we get started, I have a couple of administrative things like the proof of a butter notification and the public notice tear sheet.
Yeah, you can give that to Linda
awesome.
afterwards if you'd like, or now. I don't know. I've never tried to do that without, to project a presentation without a flash, with just a flash drive, not a computer. Yeah, that would probably be best. We do have an HDMI cable that you could hook up to do the presentation. Maybe we should figure that out. Yeah, I can hear him coming. There might be,
About to appear.
Oh,
and here he is. Thank you.
It's like Wizard of Oz.
It is, pay no attention. Excellent. And that, does that have to go underneath? No, those are USBs. Is that? Excellent. That should be long enough to get to the podium so we can hear you. Perfect. He's already on it. We're not that high tech. Well, we certainly all know who you are.
Maybe like while this is loading, if you want, I can just introduce the project.
Sure.
And then, oh, of course now.
Of course, it loads right up as soon as you get back to the podium. Yeah, you can probably stretch it out to there. Yeah, that's plenty of cord.
All right. So yeah, hi everyone. Again, Rihanna Summers from Weston and Sampson, and here with Kristen Hallmeyer, Resilience Manager. And we're here tonight to discuss pretty specific, oh sorry, Kristen, can you just X that? We're here tonight to discuss some proposed sediment sampling activities at the Slades Mill Dam, which is, you can kind of see it in this image here, but it's located within Mill Creek, adjacent to the Slades Mill Dam apartment building at 770 Revere Beach Parkway. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, we already introduced ourselves. Just as a little bit of background, as I mentioned, for this particular notice of intent, we're only proposing very limited work at this time. We're just proposing some sediment sampling activities at the Slades Mill Dam in that area, kind of circled in red to the left. We'll have a more zoomed in picture in a second, but this work is needed to inform the design of a future bigger project that we'll be proposing and coming back to the commission in probably a year or so for the overall project. But this work is to inform a future habitat enhancement and waterfront access project. The proponent is the City of Chelsea Department of Housing and Community Development. And the project is located along the banks of Mill Creek, starting at approximately at the Broadway Bridge, and extending east a little bit past where the Slades Mill Dam is shown in this image. And we're proposing invasive species treatment, primarily of Phragmites and tree of heaven, and that's along both banks, the north bank being in Revere and the southern bank being in Chelsea. And we're also proposing a lot of like trash and debris removal. There's a lot of trash out there now, and a lot of like concrete slabs, and there's a huge pile of tires on the Chelsea side.
Yeah, that was enormous.
There's a lot,
It-
yeah.
It was, and when we walked out there, not only was it muddy, but it was dirty.
It's very
It
dirty.
was.
Yeah, so in a lot of senses, it's a proposed restoration project, again, this being the future project, but on the Chelsea side, we're also going to be proposing some access improvements to the waterfront, including a boardwalk and also a kayak launch, which would be connected to an existing public park at 88 Clinton Street that the city of Chelsea recently constructed. They just had the ribbon cutting this past spring. And the last component of the project is we're proposing the partial removal of the Slades Mill Dam. And it's only the northern part of the dam that's shown in this image here, where there's the most limited amount of vegetation growth, and it's kind of the higher elevation terminus of the dam. And it's currently comprised of a mixture of a bunch of different parts of the old historic tidal mill that used to exist here, including pieces of wood. There's some riprap, and there's some exposed rebar coming off, like sticking out from the berm. And there's a small channel, only about 8 feet wide, in between the apartment building there and the dam. And the purpose of this is really just for safety. In terms of with the kayak launch that we'll be proposing, we want to create a space where it's safe for people like non-motorized boats, like kayaks mostly, to go through that area in between the dam and the building, and also to improve kind of localized improvements on the hydraulic conditions. So that's the overall future project, but at this time, we're only proposing some limited sediment sampling in that area of the dam in order to characterize the sediments there, and they'll do laboratory analyses to, see if there are contaminants, and to determine future disposal when we do the actual project in the future. So this is just another view of kind of that northern part of the berm where the sediment samples are proposed. And then I put a picture there just to show kind of what the existing conditions look like. Obviously, this is at low tide. And then I just wanted to show briefly the wetland resource areas. So we did a delineation for the site last year, and the pink lines on here are salt marsh. And the orange line to the north is Coastal Bank. And then the berm itself, that yellow line, we've categorized as Coastal Beach and Tidal Flat. And then because of the presence of shellfish all over the site, we've also identified as land subject to, land containing shellfish. So many different resource areas. And lastly, this site is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, elevation 10 feet. So this project, we're proposing work within, the sediment sampling work will be within land containing shellfish, coastal beach, and then the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And we designed it so that we won't be accessing the site by crossing the salt marsh to the south, because we wanted to avoid impacts to the salt marsh. So we're proposing to conduct the sediment sampling via a small boat, like a rowboat, which would be dropped in on the north bank, kind of on the DCR property to the north by the Cronin Ice Rink. I think so, yeah. I did check with, because I know you had asked about it on the site visit, and I checked with the engineer that was working on this, and he was saying, I think that would be feasible, because we wanted to avoid coming in through the Chelsea side, and obviously we want to avoid the salt marsh, but we were just thinking it would be less coordination with the apartments there. And then this is just a FEMA map, just showing that we're within land subject to coastal storm flowage, elevation 10 feet. So in terms of the proposed work, we're only proposing 6 sediment cores, and they'll be collected essentially where this image is showing a picture, but on the top high elevation part of the berm. Some on the top of that, and then a couple at the toe of slope, but all on the dam. The sediment sampling, as I mentioned, it will ultimately be used to inform the disposal approach and the facility acceptance for the sediment when we do the actual dredge and removal of the berm. The samples will be collected using a VibraCore system, and that will be deployed by essentially a rowboat, so a small boat, during high tide conditions for access to avoid. So we're not proposing for anyone to be walking out there on the dam to minimize disturbance. And then each of those cores will be less than 3 inches in diameter and will be basically until there's refusal, but up to about 6 feet deep. So those are the only impacts that are proposed. They'll be allowed to naturally infill after. And so all of the impacts are temporary in nature. And the whole effort is expected to take 1 to 2 days. So it should be pretty quick. This is, I know it's a little hard to see. I actually have a zoomed in. Actually, do you mind going to the next slide, Kristen? Thanks. So the little red dots are the approximate locations of each of the sediment cores to be collected. And I think there's just a note on there that if they might have to be shifted slightly, like if there's debris or something in the way.
Yeah, there were quite a bit of rocks.
There were.
Littering that entire end when we walked out there. So yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, at least 3 of your samples are within the rocks.
Right.
So you'll definitely have to move it around. But if it's within that area, I have no issue with that. I'm surprised you guys didn't file an RDA for the sampling instead of a notice of intent.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why we I think we had filed an NOI in Chelsea for sediment sampling for a different project recently. So I think that was why we were like, oh, we've had to do, and I know it's different based on the municipality, but yeah, it is very limited amount of impacts.
That's the only reason I say it.
Yeah.
Going through the process of an NOI can be a little daunting. Okay, so yeah, temporary impact.
So yeah, these are, like I mentioned, there's no permanent impacts proposed, and it is minor. It's about 2 square feet of temporary impact for coastal beach, land containing shellfish, and the floodplain. And then I think we kind of touched on all of this already, but impacts will be minor and temporary. The areas will return to pre-existing conditions after the work. The whole thing's only supposed to take a day or 2. And there will be no permanent impacts and no crossing through the salt marsh or anything.
Sounds
And I think that's all we had. But happy to answer any questions.
I don't really have any questions. I mean, the sampling is pretty self-explanatory. Using the VibraCore system is definitely going to have as little impact as possible. It's not very intrusive, and you can get it out on a boat, which is even better. So that's great. I'm really bummed I'm not going to see you guys on the 5 o'clock news trying to launch it off the train tracks over there. But no, I wish you the best of luck, and I'd like to open up to any of the commissioners.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, just out of curiosity, you're going down 6 feet. Is this battery powered or gas powered? It couldn't be manual. if
Yeah,
you're gonna do that.
that's a good question, honestly.
It's pneumatic.
It is, okay.
It'll-
Oh, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about Phragmites and Tree of Heaven.
Yes.
Where were they located?
There's a bunch of, the most Tree of Heaven is kind of along Revere Beach Parkway by like the Sladesmill Apartments. And then there's a lot of Tree of Heaven by like behind the Cronin Ice Rink. And then the Phragmites stands are pretty dense. I would say most of it, well, there's a lot on the Revere side and on the Chelsea side, right on the banks of the creek. And that's like the Phragmites is definitely the biggest one.
And one last question. Is this a historical site, Sladesmill?
It is, yeah, and we're actually we just had a meeting yesterday, ironically, on this. We're undergoing the historic review currently for the actual like removal of the berm. And we've been coordinating with MHC and NOAA as like the lead federal agency. And then we've engaged PAL as like our archaeological consultant.
Just in case you find some
Yeah.
muskets or anything from the Battle of
Chelsea Creek.
Chelsea Creek.
Yeah, we did. Actually, Christian, that's a good point. I forgot to mention we've met with both the Revere and Chelsea Historical Commission, so they're like aware of the project and generally supportive, which is great. There's a lot of history out there.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the details of the final project, and if you guys are gonna have like archaeologists digging, doing initial digs to see what you have. It's definitely an interesting site over there for sure.
Definitely, yeah. I think at a minimum there'll have to be like an archaeologist that's like monitoring the site while they do the dredge. But yeah, I think MHC's like initial response to us was essentially like, we understand this is a historic resource and it'll have an adverse impact. So we're currently in like the mitigation phase, which will definitely involve signage to educate the public about like the history of the area, especially the tidal mill and the Battle of Chelsea Creek. But yeah, I think that's going to be a big component, is like the education aspect.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So I'm a Revere resident, but I own property in Chelsea, and I've driven by this area 5,000 times in my life so far. A couple of questions. The first one is, who is responsible for maintaining that area?
Do you mean just the dam in general?
I mean, like, because that area, one of the things you mentioned, and I'm thrilled about it when you said you're going to clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
So, when was the last time the area was cleaned up? Do you have any idea?
Considering the nature of where it's located, it's probably not likely that it's been cleaned up at all.
Yeah.
People shouldn't be dumping in there for any reason, but if you have any data that you can
Yeah,
provide.
so DCR obviously owns the Cronin Ice Rink area, but then the city of Chelsea owns now like 88 Clinton Street, which is the new like Jaime Hernandez Park that just opened. DPW has gone out there, like Chelsea's DPW has gone out there to try to do some cleanups, but because of like how infested with Phragmites and just like the general nature of the properties, like the site, it's just very difficult to get out there and clean. So it probably has not, like they've gone out there and cleaned there once since 2024, but there needs to be a more extensive cleanup. And then the other part of this project is like some of it is still on private property. So if we do build the boardwalk, the city would get an easement to own that property to have the boardwalk be on it, which would be then maintained by the city of Chelsea.
And Revere would in some way have something to do with that as well? Because I mean, it's right on that line, so would
The boardwalk side is still the city of Chelsea, but the city of Revere is supportive. And I think something that's unique about my role, since I work for Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop, is that I help with different regional projects that kind of go over the borders of both cities. So everyone's aware, and the cities of Revere is very supportive of this project too. And I know that DCR is also super supportive, and they also are collaborating with us on the invasive species management plan.
And one follow-up for you. So right after that, there's that bridge to nowhere that collapsed.
Yes.
So there's that whole entire project that's been stalled for 1 million years that's basically on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Forbes site, yes.
Yeah, just sold, but just for your side of it, just because they are hopefully going to be planning something for it. Do you have anything to do with maybe that bridge that being done or something? Because I mean, I drive by that every day. It drives me nuts that it's just dead.
Yeah, so the city of Chelsea is looking to do a feasibility study for that whole site in support of like Green Roots and Mass Audubon if they are able to get that site. Because I know the ultimate goal would be to try to turn that site also into like a public park.
Yes.
Just because like there's not a lot of like waterfront parks in the city of Chelsea, so that would be like a great opportunity, especially since that site is currently
Supposed to be the greenest area in the world or so, the country. That's what it was supposed to be. So I just
Yeah.
want to know if you had any insight to get that out there. Obviously, conservation, and that's possibly a green site that's currently a pit.
Yeah.
Just kind of wondering if that bridge right next door was going to be any part of what you're doing now.
Not in this current project, but if the Forbes site does continue to like be acquired by Green Roots and Mass Audubon, the city would definitely be supportive in helping figure out what to do with that site. And they are trying to take initial steps to do that. It's just a slow and ongoing process.
Oh, only 20 years. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
Ever seen that windmill actually turning and generating any electricity?
Now it has to be removed.
Yeah.
It's completely dead.
I don't-
Like 40 or $50 million, just.
Yeah. Yeah, fun times. Okay, there's nobody in the audience, so I know the audience doesn't have any questions. Any other questions from the commissioners about this? No? All right. I'd like to call for a motion to close out the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close out the hearing.
Second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I really don't see this causing a huge impact, and it definitely is not going to have a negative impact on the environment, especially the process that you'll be using. I wish you the best of luck with all of this. That being said, I'd like to call for a motion to approve this notice of intent.
Motion to approve the NOI.
All in favor?
We need a second.
A second, please, sorry.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be following up once the work is done, because it is a notice of intent. I'm not sure how the certificate of compliance comes in with all this, because kind of what I was getting at the RDA stuff. So we'll probably see you afterwards to close this out. But
Definitely.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we did have some site visits. One in particular that I just want to touch upon real quick is the billboard removal. I just want to get it on record that are definitely interested in having the electrical service removed and making sure that all of the removal in this sensitive area is done in a way that is not going to be impactful. It's definitely infested with Phragmites and a few other choice things over there, garbage to say the least. But I haven't gotten a resolution about that. We also walked down the New Revere High School on 190 North Shore Road. It was an interesting walk down. The plans are about 60%, I believe she said, complete, and we'll be getting a more finalized plan when they make their presentation. They had a few things they needed to button up, but basically we wanted to track down the access roads, the emergency access roads. We walked that down after your departure, and they definitely have a good plan to stay away from the creek area. So I'm excited for you guys to see those plans. And then the Slades Mill and then 74 Dunn Road, we also walked down as well. We did have some communications. The DPW had some sewer backups, cleanups, and then we did have some communications about 1012 North Shore Road. At this time, Tom, if you have any updates on that, I would love to hear.
Yeah, I met out there with the parking commissioner, Zach Babbo, and he advised that the commercial vehicles will be fine as long as they're parked in the driveway. He said they would never ticket a commercial vehicle that's in the driveway, so someone needs to communicate that to John,
Okay.
that if he parks his commercial vehicles in the driveway, he will not be subject to tickets.
Okay.
And Zach was happy to go back out and reconfirm. Any residents living there, residential vehicles, can get a free sticker from the city of Revere. They can park in the driveway, they can park on the side of the house, they can park basically anywhere over there.
Okay.
So plenty of available parking, shouldn't be an issue with parking moving forward. Again, happy to have Zach back out, introduce him to John, measure the truck, whatever he needs to do.
Okay.
So once that's communicated to John and he understands that, I have a draft plan that I will give him a step-by-step on what he needs to do.
Okay.
It's gonna start with taking out the retaining wall. Well,
All
taking
the-
a little bit of soil, taking the retaining wall, taking a little bit of soil, taking the retaining wall.
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely
gonna
gonna
be
have
a
to be
process.
a
Otherwise,
partition.
and he's gotta start it soon, because it's gonna fall into the neighbor's house.
Yeah, it definitely looked like it was leaning more towards the fence than it was towards his property, for sure. I did have a few conversations about this, that it definitely needs to be taken care of soon.
So I don't know how to get a translator.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely have to figure that out. I definitely want to make sure there is no communication barrier with this project,
He was
especially.
saying he would use Google Translate, and I just want someone who speaks his language that I can
Yeah,
tell that
absolutely.
person what to tell him, and he can ask questions back, and we can have a
Absolutely,
full-
we definitely need an impartial translator for this process, for sure. So, any open discussion or anything that other commissioners would like to discuss? All right, seeing none, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.